Okay, let's continue now, Perek Gimel, from where we left off with yesterday, or Vera Inyan. Let's just go a little bit over a couple of things that we mentioned. Yesterday we spoke about the Inyan of this Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama, which is split up into the Esse Bechinus, which is Keneged the Esse Spheros, which we explained can also be in the Olamos, the 10 spheres of the worlds, but there's also 10 spheres in the Neshama, split up Be'ikar into two parts, the three Emois, the three mothers, which we said, which is of course, which is Chabad, basically, right? That's what it is, Chochmah, Bina, Vadas, which we're going to explain that's more today, not more Barichas, and then the rest of them, which is of course Hesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, Netzach, Chod, Yesod, Malchus, whatever, everything else, which we haven't, I'm not going to explain right now. Maybe one time we'll explain it. Again, I told you can look at the Shurim, healthy habits. You can look it up online, and you can look up details or practicalities of all the other 7 emotions that we have. But the most important thing that we have to say based on yesterday was that the Heiliger Tanya was explaining to us that in order for a person to have really healthy emotions, which is Be'ika, Ava and Yira, the Ava and the Yira is everything fits into that category as we're going to explain today. You need to have a real base. You need to have a foundation. And that foundation begins and only can begin, he writes, when you have contemplation, when you have Chochmah Bina Vadas, when you have thoughts, when you have, going into something with your brain, with your understanding. That is the most important thing. Now, it's interesting because we find also a physical parallel to the idea that even within the intellect, there are different parts. We have, for example, the brain, which is the human brain, which is comprised of 2 hemispheres, right? We know that the right brain influences the left side of the body, and the left part of the brain influences the right part of the body, right? Rahman, so when a person has a stroke, we can often see where everything comes from over there. And the same is true also in a very spiritual way, that some people have a sort of most of their places is more on the right hand side, which is the Chochmah, whereas some people are on the left-hand side, which is more of the Bina, right? The Das puts everything together, whatever. But the point is that we do find such things. Some of the tzaddikim say that's why it's important to wear Rabbeinu Tam tefillin, because Rosh and Rabbeinu Tam equal the 2 meters, but Al Kaponim, let's move on from there. So we've said that you have to think, and Yiddishkeit and real emotions, that's real, that's genuine, comes from a person who thought about things. And that comes from Chacham Bina Vadas. Once you've mastered that step and graduated from there, you can move on then after that to everything else. So I thought that's an important akdama that I wanted to make for today. Let's continue. Uvera Inyan. Now we're going to explain how the 3 parts of the Seichel are foundations of all of the rest of the Midas. Okay? Kihine has Seichel shebenefesh hamaskeles. Some people even call it the nefesh hamaskeles. Shehu hamaskil kol dava. Nikra b'shem Chochmah. We're going to start in order Chochmah, we'll move on to Bina, and then of course Das. So Chochmah comes from 2 words. Koyach ma. That's where Chochmah comes from. In other words, Chochmah is the power, is the ability to say Koyach ma. What is this? Okay, that's the basic idea. It also means it's the potential. It's an idea that's completely undeveloped, which is why you need to have Bina afterwards, as we will explain. So Chochmah is this sort of like abstract idea that comes to us. It's a chiddush. It's something that comes from the outside often. It's not been developed properly. Koyach ma, what's this? Okay? It's not been developed. It's just an idea. It's a thought. And when you start making it more practical, if you want to go into the richness, if you want to go to the depth of what's going on, of something specific, of Chochmah, Nikra Bina. That's the next stage. So Chochmah is step number 1 in the thought process. It's just like Chochmah, what do we say? Koyach ma. What is this? And now when I start pondering, when I start wondering, contemplating what's going on, going to the depths of what's really happening to really understand it, that's called Bina. Vehein heim of va'im. Hamoilidois ahavas Hashem v'yirosoi upachtoi. This is the Av ve'im, the mother and the father, Chochmah and Bina. That Hamoilidois literally give birth, so to speak, right? To Avas Hashem, Yiras Hashem, and Pachad. Now, why is he comparing it to an Av and an Aim? Because there's a real comparison. And there is a tremendous amount of Kabbalistic ideas of how, in Kabbalah, things are written sometimes male and female. What's male and female? It's just a way of speech? No. Because there's a koyach that a male has, and there's a koyach that a female has. And it's all written down. It's amazing, by the way, when you go through so much of Kabbalah, which we'll talk about in the Sefer, and we'll see how in the physical way it represents so much. It's not like stam, right? Which is why, by the way, just an agav, Chachma Bina V'das, every one of the 10 Sfiras has a mokim in our physical body. So Chachma Das is the brain, and then Chesed and Gevura is the hands, and it moves down because it goes down in that vertical line. But the first thing is, right, the halacha is in Shulchan Aruch, if you want to have a shower, the first thing you do is you wash your head, because that's the Rosh Kol of Ivorim, right? Everything starts from over there. So two sides of your brain is of V'aim. What's the pshat? A father will plant the seed into his wife, and the wife will take that seed and develop it into a child, right? The koyach of a male is the spark of energy, but doesn't develop anything. A female energy is an energy that doesn't have the chiddush of her own, but once is given a chiddush, is able to develop that chiddush. Okay, and this applies to so many things, and we could talk about it in a marriage idea, because it applies to so many cases as well of situations between, husband and wife in a normal, emotional, and even mental way. It's an amazing thing. But I'll go upon why the Baal HaTanya is comparing it to Av V'Aim is just like the father gives the seed and the woman develops it, so too the Chokhmah is something that comes from the outside. It's just a thought, Ba'alma, it's like a chiddush. It requires the Bina, which is Nekeva female, it's the aim, the mother, to come and develop it. That's why he's comparing it to Av V'Aim over here. Okay, let's move on a bit. Ki ha-seichel shebenefesh hamaskeles, this seichel that we're discussing, right, of understanding, of intellectual power, kishemizboinen umamik ma'oid, begedulas Hashem. He's going to talk about this a lot. When a person is misboinen, right, he contemplates, he thinks deeply into the godless of the Rabbeinu Shalom. How the Rebbeinu Shalom fills all the worlds. V'soivev kol olmin literally means transcends all the worlds. But the way that the Baal HaTanya brings it is the light is so separate, is so above all of the worlds, it's almost like the Rebbeinu Shalom is kaviyachol turning the worlds around. That's why it's v'soivev kol olmin. When you start contemplating how the Rebbeinu Shalom is so great, is so full, v'koloi kamei kala choshev, and in front of the Rebbeinu Shalom, everything is nothing. What happens when you start contemplating these thoughts? Noldo v'nisoyrera midas yira, haroimemas b'moichai, umachshavto liyira, ulispoishesh megudlosai yisbar she'eino soif etachlis, upachad Hashem belibai. This is what happens when you start contemplating the Rebbeinu Shalom in your life. You start having this incredible, almost embarrassment at how great the Rebbeinu Shalom is and the godless of Hashem. And you start being misoira this in your brain, in your thoughts. Upachad Hashem b'liboy v'shov, and after that, yislav libo ba'ava azah, kurish be'esh, like flaming fire, b'chashika, b'chafitza, usushuka, where all these Lashonis with fervor and great excitement, the never shoykeke legdulas ein soif baruch hu. It's an unbelievable thing. Those of you that have ever learnt the Rambam, in the beginning of your Sodei Torah, the Rambam also says that if you want the recipe for Ava and Yira, the way to do it is this: contemplating the Rebbeinu Shalom's world. Look at the world, see what Hashem created, see the godless of Hashem, and you will get everything. The only difference is, by the way, it's very interesting. The Rambam says first Ava and then Yira. The Baal HaTanya learns, as you can see what we just read, first Yira and then Ava. That's already too deep. We're not going to go now why the difference is so and why the Tanya held specifically to go in the opposite way around. But what he is telling us is very important. And that is when we start being misboinin in our head, in our Chokhmah and Bina, which are the only two we've discussed until now, all of a sudden we get this awe of the Rebbeinu Shalom. We even get a pachad, and then eventually we'll get the Ava of Hashem with this great fire that he's talking about. Vihi kolois hanefesh, that's the languishing of the soul. Kediksiv, nichsafa, וגם כל סו נפשי וכולי, כסיב צומא נפשי לאלוקים וכולי, וכסיב צומא לך נפשי וכולי. All of these psukim, all of these wonderful songs that we know very much, that we sing, is talking about my nefesh, my neshama is thirsty, is desperate for the Rabbeinu Shalom. Where does that come from? It sprouts from thought. It sprouts from chachma or bina. V'hatzimoin, right? This thirst, right? That sprouts as a result of contemplation. Hu misoid ha'esh. That comes from the fire which is in the neshama, right? The comparison of fire and ava is because fire always tries to go up, like ava is always something that wants to go more. Right? Right? The place in the body that the eish is, again, spiritually, of course, talking, is balev. And again, there's a lot to discuss over here. What's pshat, water, fire, why one is in the brain, one is in the heart. Again, we could spend hours and hours on this, but we're just trying to understand the basic words. And the makor of the mind that cools everything down is of the brain, which is why they bring down, this is already a natural thing, that if you're in the winter and you're cold and you want to keep the body heat, make sure you cover your head. The cover your head, it keeps in the body heat, right? That's a very important thing because the moyach has the spiritual mind which cools everything down. Anyway, so now we've discussed chokhmah or bina. That means every emotion that you have is a reaction to something on the outside of you. Now we have a tremendous amount of emotions and they fall into two categories. Either you're drawn into it, which is ava, or you're repelled by it, which is yira. Everything falls into those two categories. Now we move to the last one, which is of course das. Vahadas. We got chokhmah, we have bina. Chokhmah is the very raw thought, the chiddush, and then we have bina, which develops it a bit more. Vahadas, which by the way is the most important of chokhmah bina, is das. Das is the most important. Humalosha, where does it come from? Vahadam yoda is chava. Now we know this is the first time in the Torah we have this idea of das, dea, right? Knowing, so in a very literal sense. And we're talking about Va'odam Yoda Eschava means he knew her. When you look at Rashi, it means they had relations. They were together. Okay, it's interesting. Why does the Torah use such a lashon? Use another lashon. Okay, it wanted to use a lashon naki, I get it. But use another lashon. What? Va'odam Yoda Eschava and Adam knew his wife. Why use a lashon of Yoda das? Why no? Vuhu. Lashon hiskashrus v'hischabrus. It's this lashon of connection. That's what it is. It's a connection. Just like Adam and Chava had a connection at that time, the word das means connection. Shemekasher daito bekesher amitz v'chozug ma'oid v'yiska machshavto b'choyze begidlus ein soy baruch hu. That means what we're doing is we're affixing our thoughts very intensely with a real connection to what we're thinking about. It's not just a chiddush which has been developed. Now it's becoming real. Now it's becoming practical. Now it's being mispoken on a whole deeper level. I don't even stop thinking about it. Even if a person is a chacham and he's a novam begodless Hashem, he knows how to think of Hashem. He understands how to contemplate. Hine. If he doesn't tie it in, if he doesn't keep it there, glue it there, connect it, he will never get to real yira and avas Hashem. He's delusional. He's got nice thoughts, but he never developed it properly. The real ava and yira won't come out. Das, which is the kiyum of the midas and the chiyus, and that includes everything that comes out of ava and everything comes out of yira. So das is the most important out of everything because what it does is it turns the thought into reality. It's the real connection at this stage in this case. And I'll tell you a mashal that I heard about this, just to explain it, hopefully on a more practical level. And this is what das is. If, for example, you told me that, or I always knew that if you have electricity that's connected to the electric circuit, to electric current, and you mess it with water, you're gonna have a problem, right? It's gonna kill the electricity, right? Because electricity. Now, what happens if I see someone pour water over electric wires while it's connected and everything's fine? I'm gonna probably say to myself, I guess I made a mistake. Maybe it's not true what I heard. Maybe water is okay with it. Maybe it's a different type of electricity. I don't know. Maybe it's just not true. But, and I'll explain it. If you go to a magic show and the magician says, I'm now going to cut this woman in half in front of your eyes and I'll put it back together again. He has her in a box. You can see the window on the side. He has a saw. He saws her in half. He takes the two parts, puts them separate. You see the legs there. You see the hands over there. And then he puts back together again. Are you going to think, oh my gosh, I guess you really can cut someone in half and put them together? No. What you're going to say is, how did he trick me? With their cameras, with their mirrors, I'm going to figure out pshat. I'm not going to say I was wrong. That's das. Das means it's so into you. It's so part of you. You're not going to think that you're wrong because you've contemplated, you've developed it, and you've deepened the connection to such a way that it's real. Then you've got the Av and Yira. And that's what he's teaching us over here, is going to get a person to real Av and Yira, is the Chachma, Bina, Vadas, in contemplating the Rabban Shem Gadlus, and that leads to everything. Rabbi say we have a big break now, because next week I'm not here, but Be'ez Hashem, in another week, we'll be Siyat Shmaya, start Perek Daled. Shkoy for joining.